The first major PlayStation exclusive to be released on PC has finally landed, and the results are, sadly, sort of mixed. Horizon Zero Dawn originally released in 2017, about a week before The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild stole some of its critical thunder. Personally though, I thought Horizon was a much more engaging game. It may not have had Breath of the Wild's dynamic systems or clever puzzles, but it was much more successful in other areas, such as its story, characters, visuals, and combat. The performance in Horizon was better than Breath of the Wild's mostly 30 FPS unless it rains, then significantly under 30 FPS, but it was still trapped at 30 like most of Sony's exclusives, so I was thrilled when Horizon was announced for a PC release. Although Nintendo, if you wanted to do the same thing for Breath of the Wild, that'd be pretty cool. The result was a bit of a rushed port, which has caused a bit of controversy, and don't worry, I will absolutely be addressing the port's issues, but let's start by talking about why you should definitely still care about this 3.5-year-old game. Horizon Zero Dawn is an open-world action RPG from the makers of the Killzone series, Guerilla Games. It's a major departure from their sci-fi first-person shooter series and takes place in a unique post-apocalyptic setting. Horizon's world was destroyed in what was effectively a Terminator-style apocalypse. Humans created AI, the AI went rogue, and yada yada yada, the world ended.
She tells me that her ex-boyfriend was over late last night, and yada yada yada, I'm really tired today.
Centuries, if not millennia later, humanity has re-emerged, but without any of the knowledge we had during our time. The result sees the humans of this world existing primarily in hunter-gatherer tribes. This creates a unique world where things seem very low-tech and antiquated, while at the same time being very high-tech and advanced, because while there are still animals to hunt and flowers to pick, the real threat are the packs of dangerous, dinosaur-like machines roaming the land. It's not hard to imagine the creatives at Guerilla sitting around throwing out ideas and one of them saying, dude, what if we have like cavemen fighting robot dinosaurs with bows and arrows, followed by the others in the room exhaling their bong hits and saying, whoa. The really impressive feat as far as the writing goes is that they found a way to have this idea make a reasonable degree of sense. I was honestly shocked at how convinced I was by the lore in this game when the revelations start happening. I'll avoid going into major spoilers, but I will say that the specific nature of the apocalypse, the plan hatched for humanity's survival, and the decisions made by some of the people involved explain to a reasonable degree of believability why there are robot dinosaurs and why humanity appears to have regressed to hunter-gatherer tribes. The character work is a bit uneven, but the two lead characters do a great job of carrying the story. The player character is the dynamic Ginger Archer Aloy. She's portrayed by Ashley Birch of Life is Tumblr infamy.
Yes, I believe I should control the gun. It's the men who need to be checked. Jesus, I shot myself! Ugh, I shot myself! Back up, back up! Gun?
Papadoo! You fucking killed my dog!
Oh my god!
And is a great example of a female protagonist who the audience can connect with. Aloy begins as an outcast of her tribe, the Nora, and from her childhood straight through to the end of the game is consistently taking chances, overcoming odds, and proving herself to those around her. She'll throw herself in the middle of a dangerous situation and force the player to work hard in order for her to succeed and earn the respect of the game's other characters. The other standout character is Silence, a mysterious man who is played to perfection by Lance Reddick. Saying that Lance Reddick plays a mysterious character with gravitas shouldn't be a shock, as that's pretty much his thing, but he definitely isn't a weak link here. On a side note, I'm working on a series of videos on Remedy's games, and he plays a mysterious badass in Quantum Break too. Also, he's Zavala in Destiny. This concludes the Lance Reddick tangent. While there are a couple of other solid performances here and there, the performance capture is pretty inconsistent and not nearly at the level of Death Stranding, which uses the same technology, Guerilla Games' own Decima engine. Where Horizon beats Death Stranding by a wide margin is in its combat. In addition to your melee spear, you can carry up to 4 weapons at a time, and while your workhorse will be a bow, there are also a few varieties of rope casters and a few devices which are effectively just guns. Most weapons have different types of ammo, with the weapon's rarity often dictating how many it can support. There are several status ailments which will proc when enough of its type of damage is dealt, and the ammo types help with this greatly. The other means to trigger a status ailment is by destroying a piece of a given robot dino which carries a corresponding substance. For example, if an enemy has a large coolant tank on his chest, destroying it will instantly activate a freeze status to that enemy as well as every enemy around it. Likewise, will destroying a fuel tank trigger a flame status. Each of the machines are made up of dozens of small parts, and I found that one of the most effective strategies was to peel off the majority of a target's armor with sonic arrows that do heavy tear damage and knock chunks of protection off your enemies with cool-sounding sonic booms.
Sonic boom!
No, not those kind of sonic booms, more like the ones Jango Fett used in Attack of the Clones. On certain enemies, you can even knock off incredibly powerful weapons, which in addition to eliminating the enemy's ability to use that attack, they can also be picked up and used by the player. The rope caster can be used to shoot satisfying harpoons into a large enemy, tying them to the ground via several points of contact, which can eventually trip them, letting you exploit their vulnerable parts, trigger status ailments, knock off weapons, or land a critical strike with your spear. The tripcaster can let you set up trip mines, which do incredibly heavy damage, and I found that was my key to defeating over-leveled foes if I found myself tackling a side quest before I really should have been ready for it. While there are a lot of tools at your disposal, the machines won't make any of this easy, as their AI is pretty solid. Many of them will avoid your traps and react to how you're playing, rather than just follow the same predictable patterns. The human enemies, on the other hand, are flat out stupid. I think Guerilla was worried that the tools at Aloy's disposal aren't really well suited to human versus human combat, so they dumbed down the AI to well below what the Helghast troops seem to be capable of in the Killzone games. This wouldn't be much of a problem if the human encounters were used sparingly, but there is a lot of fights against human enemies, and in almost all situations, your best bet is to just kill the elite troop first, then use their weapon to turn the rest of them into a joke. The monotony of these encounters, particularly when compared to the dynamic nature of the Robo-Dino fights, made me quickly disregard the Bandit Camp side missions. But luckily, that wasn't a major issue because there are plenty of other side activities which can help level you up. Horizon's spin on Ubisoft's towers are the gigantic, disc-headed Brachiosaurus creatures called Tallnecks, and Guerilla did a decent job of making the way you mount and scale the mobile beasts interesting and varied. There are also not too many of them, so the activity doesn't get stale, and when you do complete one, so much of the map's fog of war clears that it feels like a really worthwhile use of your time. My favorite side activities were the Cauldrons, which are beautifully designed dungeons full of engaging traversal puzzles and challenging combat encounters. When you complete one, you're not only granted a significant amount of experience, but the ability to reprogram more machines to fight at your side. Few things can turn the tide of battle faster than stunning one of the more powerful dinos, sticking your magic spear into its robo-butt, and turning it into your best buddy. Yeah, who's a good boy? Most of the other skills in the game are earned via points which you acquire from certain quests, side quests, and level ups, and they act as a nice carrot at the end of the stick to encourage you to complete non-story objectives. If you do not want to pursue additional objectives, it is possible to keep pace with the story missions, as while there are a lot of RPG elements, your level doesn't appear to be tied very closely to your base power level. So if you're crafty with your tactics and equipment, you can take down nearly any enemy in the game regardless of your level. If that's not the case, I did a fair amount of off-the-intended path exploring and never found myself in an experienced red zone. You know what I mean, the areas where you accidentally wander into during an RPG and get one hit killed by an enemy which your weapons have no effect on at all. That kind of level gating is annoying, and while the activities and quests do have recommended levels in Horizon, they feel like a rough suggestion more than a hard requirement. Where the RPG systems fall apart a bit is in the inventory management system and item economy. While you can buy ammo, the amount you can hold in reserve is so low that you'll find yourself needing to craft it in the middle of battle. The good news is, if you have the parts, it's an incredibly easy and smooth process. The bad news is, you may find yourself without the parts you need, and you'll be forced to either forage for them in the wild or buy them from vendors. But the economy in the game is terrible, so you'll find yourself trying to sell items in order to buy what you need, which can be a confusing process. It all felt kind of unnecessary and could have been fixed by either making money easier to acquire or dramatically increasing the amount of items you can hold in reserve, but the best solution would be totally revamping the crafting system. With that being said, the loop of gathering resources, hunting both organic and robotic wildlife, and crafting things you need to make yourself more powerful and survive is quite a lot of fun. It's just not very streamlined and could stand to be improved in the upcoming sequel, The Forbidden West. I tested Horizon on two separate rigs of comparable power, one on a 4K TV and the other on my 1440p gaming monitor. The 4K performance was okay, and I was able to get it running at a mostly stable 60 FPS with some fiddling in the settings, but it did have some frame pacing hitches. The hitches didn't dramatically affect the performance, but I found that playing the game with a controller was very difficult, as I was one of the unlucky players who experienced a glitch. This glitch eliminated the time-slowing bullet time effect, which triggers whenever you bring up the weapon wheel or zoom in while aiming. I heard that this glitch could be fixed by restarting a new save file, but by the time I realized that none of my slowdown upgrades were taking effect, I'd already put several hours into the game. Luckily, the precision which I lost by not being able to slow down time was recovered when I started playing on my desktop with a keyboard and mouse. I got to around character level 47 before a patch fixed the issue, and with the ability to slow down time and aim with the mouse during the last few missions, I honestly felt overpowered and wished I'd picked a higher difficulty. The other benefit to playing on the gaming monitor was I found that it essentially eliminated the frame hitches by setting an adaptive resolution frame target at 60 FPS. So while my monitor supports up to 165 Hz and the game was frequently running at 90 to 130 frames a second in 1440p, setting the resolution to scale whenever the frames would drop below 60 appeared to keep performance in top form. That all being said, even at its worst, this port still performs far better than the PS4 original, even on a PS4 Pro, as that version never went higher than 30 FPS. So if you have not played Horizon and have the option to play either, I'd still say the PC version is the better bet. It's just a shame that Guerilla didn't manage to make this port as flawless as the recent Death Stranding port, which I reviewed a couple of weeks ago. Kojima Productions' implementation of deep learning super sampling made Death Stranding look truly next-gen, as it was having no trouble running at 60 FPS and 4K at ultra settings. The lack of DLSS combined with the inconsistent performance of Horizon is more evidence towards my theory that DLSS or other types of AI-assisted performance enhancement could be a real game changer in the industry. I really hope that Sony continues to port their games to PC in the future and that they iron out their porting difficulties, because despite all the technical issues, Horizon is still an incredible game which feels right at home on a mouse and keyboard. Maybe if we're lucky and the gods smile upon us, we'll get ports of God of War or Ghost of Tsushima, and if we're even luckier and the Elder gods smile upon us, we'll get Bloodborne. And as much as I'd hate to make what is effectively a political recommendation, purchasing Horizon on Steam will certainly help those things become a reality. However, if the issues I've gone over with the port have made you wary, there's nothing wrong with giving it a bit of time and waiting for a Steam sale before you pick up your bow and start hunting robot dinosaurs.